Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cornerstone Collective. It's the intersection of Christ and culture. I am Jay Brown, your host. Today with me is Angus McLeod.
Hey, hey.
As well as Javan Brown.
Hello, hello.
We're talking about the 7 C's of culture to drive our community of faith, Cornerstone. They are commitment, community, communication, competence, creativity, compassion, and celebration. Got a scripture to start us out today. Angus, you want to read that 1 Corinthians 1:18?
Yes. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. 1 Corinthians 1:18.
Amen to that. I think I've definitely seen that be true in so many conversations I've had with people who don't understand faith, how they see it as a crutch, they see it as other things, but to those who've encountered Christ, they see the transformation, which is the truth of the gospel.
Amen.
It's so powerful.
Yeah. I've lived that out, because I did a lot of life before I came to Christ, and I truly didn't understand, why people would give so much up for something that they had never seen. Why they said they couldn't do this or that or the other thing, and the hope. And now having Christ and giving up a lot of things that it wasn't because I was told to, it was because I no longer wanted those things. Now I'm living that life that before I didn't understand. And now living it also, I look back and go, man, how hopeless was I? And so I can really identify with people who, man, I see some of the things that people are going through right now. I'm like, how can you even get up in the morning because you don't have Christ? Like, all of this is for nothing if you don't have Christ, right? So, so I love that scripture.
Such a difference, like the paradigm that you have, the worldview you have whenever you are someone who is very much has a relationship with Christ that's active, and you're walking that out and trying to be more like Jesus, which is the challenge. And so to see it and to see other people disregard or to make fun of our faith is hard to take, one, but two, you understand it because to them it doesn't make sense because they are spiritually in darkness. And so there's a piece of that that's expected because of what it talks about. Javen, what do you think, man? 1 Corinthians 1:18.
It's definitely true. Kind of to go along the lines of what Angus is saying, like things within a religious context, like to us that are so pivotal, to other people are just like kind of meaningless and nonsensical. Like I think about even in examples of like pop culture, like the conversation that they have in Pulp Fiction about like the fact that the bullets kind of miss them whenever they go through that whole thing at the end.
Right.
About how Vince is just like so convinced that it was like luck or that it was just like by circumstance. But then
Jules is
like, like it's an act of God, like telling me, oh yeah, no, you actually need to like realign yourself and get in line with what I'm doing. I think miracles and definitely the realm of the spiritual can work in that way, where to us it might seem like we're experiencing like a genuine, powerful act of God, and especially like with things like the altar call that externally would seem like, oh, they must be just acting or like they're just doing it because it's like a show. Whereas like, no, there's like a genuine spirit of God moving through that. So yeah.
Powerful idea. We've been talking about our commitment to Christ and the concept of having a family that is rooted in Jesus. And we talk about that in future. Family is a theme we've been talking about. And part of that is about our family seeing and having a mission and values that are from God and living that mission towards Him in the vision He would give us for our family for the future. So the idea is to envision what we want our family to be. So in our case, it's to see our kids thrive in Jesus, to see our grandkids, should Jesus tarry, be those that also make those decisions and have families that move forward in the way of Christ. And so that's our heart. And so how do we get there is by modeling and by living that out. Today, as we try to talk about some of these things, it's interesting because we're going to dive in a little bit into some things that are on the edge of conspiracy theory / also in conspiracy theory, but also within Christendom. There's been a lot brought to the forefront, especially in social media, not mainstream media really, but social media big time, on these ideas of all this satanic imagery that's been used across popular culture, both in films and Hollywood and in music especially, and in the Hollywood elites. And the first one that we kind of pulled from is actually Nicki Minaj, who is a singer and a rapper, artist. She's very, very popular, platinum selling artist who recently had a conversion in her life to Christ and has been very vocal about it, very much on the other end. I mean, her name is literally Minaj as in Menage a Trois. So the idea is like she comes out of like a stripper background and all these other crazy things that kind of was her lifestyle. And then very much her music emulates that kind of concept. And then for her to actually have this life change has been pretty pivotal. She's been calling out Hollywood, saying that elites in Hollywood are doing a lot of satanic rituals behind the scenes, and how she's telling other Christ followers, like, no, these people are all about like child sacrifice or other really dark stuff. Angus, you've seen some of this. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think all of this stuff is conspiracy theory, or it's been conspiracy theory. But I really think that what we're going to be seeing, and this is, I think, why it's important that we talk about it, is because Christians need to understand that the stuff that we haven't, the spiritual activity that we haven't necessarily seen, that the rest of the world is very familiar with. You can see because of the exposure that they're not hiding it anymore.
Right.
In all of the things that we're going to be talking about today, but it's no longer being hidden, and so it's a frog in a pot kind of thing. So they're turning the temperature up. So we're going to see more of this, not less. And I think that there's going to be more and more truth and things that come out, but it's going to be really important that we check our facts and all of those things, because AI is going to be very easy at inserting
Absolutely.
various people into these different things.
Yeah, right now, even Sora, just the videos we see, and it's kind of still easy to distinguish, but you have to pay attention. Like if you don't see the Sora watermark, sometimes the AI is pretty convincing. So depending on the video. So as you kind of come into the spiritual stuff where it's like, oh, this is spiritual stuff revealed, or this is this, it's easy for them to use this other stuff that makes something fake become a reality and starts to be claims of something. But as we come back to her argument about faith and spirituality, this is something that she's essentially talking about participating in or have witnessed herself. So that's been interesting. Javan, you've seen a little bit her posting that way on her Twitter, on her Instagram, things like that. What do you think?
100%. I mean, what she's saying is definitely true, because if you get enough voices to go out and kind of testify to the fact that this is repetitively happening, then we start to see a pattern forming.
Right.
And I think for her especially to kind of like have such a reversal within her own life to now where she's willing to talk about everything that used to go on, that she used to participate in just for the sake of like fame, money, and glory, is really eye-opening to a lot of people that have kind of been blinded to the really dark activity that happens in Hollywood. I know, especially with things related to like Jay-Z and kind of like the child sacrifice rings, things related to like Pizzagate, how they've used like pizza and hot dogs as terms, which for the elites are like signals of like what kind of child is being trafficked, and like certain symbols that they use, things like that. It's all definitely real, and it's coming to light. And it's so sad because I mean, we like even biblically, you can see this. Like, this is what was happening in the Old Testament with God's like Baal and Moloch, or even like within Aztec and Mayan civilizations, where they would have open child sacrifice because they believe that's what pleased the gods, which to us we understand to be demons. But it's just, I mean, it's kind of crazy how we're almost starting to see history repeat itself to where now that this is being brought to light, it's like there's almost seemingly no like justified reaction from the public. Everybody just seems to be like, yeah, this is terrible that this is happening, but then like nothing has been taken. Nobody's been condemned. Nobody's been imprisoned. Like there's been no political action taken against it. So it's all crazy, man.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. So the accusation, just to clarify, so Nicki's making a clarification. She's saying, that the elites in Hollywood, specifically in music, on that side of everything, they are actively participating in using things like child blood and more specifically child sacrifice, from her allegations, saying that they are participating in these things as worship in a satanic ritual and things to gain power, to gain authority, to use spiritual realm type of things. And she's tying it to artists like Jay-Z. Jay-Z, known as one of the most famous, prolific rappers of all time, platinum selling, major stuff, amazing hooks and stuff like that, amazing lyricist. He comes out of a background in New York City selling drugs on the corner when he was really young, and then kind of made his way into music and became very popular, and kind of lived through the East Coast, West Coast kind of gangbang stuff that went on there, and was able to kind of come out on top of that. They've been tied to all sorts of big brand deals and having their own sneakers and their own clothing and things like that. And then he has his own thing called Rock Nation, which is a production house, and they do all sorts of stuff. So they do lots of artists, they do all sorts of sports athletes and stuff like that with their Rock Nation sports. So they represent all sorts of people kind of like as agents now at the top end. So they're not just artists themselves, they're now representing other artists and more specifically putting on big concerts. So they're the ones that have been doing the Super Bowl for the last 10 years or so, or 8 years. So it's really interesting. Like, they are connected to that for sure. And it's people making decisions on that end. So whenever she's making these accusations, like Jay-Z's seen as someone who's like a billionaire businessman now because he have all of his interests and all the things that are worth this money. Maybe not liquid, but definitely in his net worth. So you're talking about somebody really significant. I mean, Jay-Z's married to Beyonce. Beyonce's huge following. So she's kind of making accusations essentially as them as a couple. And then there's other accusations that recently came out, which to your point is difficult because AI nowadays, you can put almost anybody in any picture together. So as the Epstein files have come out and Epstein being connected to these child trafficking rings and other things like that, also being connected to Moloch worship from interviews with his niece and some things like that, saying, oh yeah, we on the outside we're Jewish and participated on the outside as Jewish things, but on the inside, actually as our family, we're actually doing sacrifices and drinking blood and doing these other things for Moloch and worshiping Baal. And you're like, oh, what's going on? And so it's really shocking tying Jay-Z now to Epstein and seeing him as participating, not just in the emails, but in pictures that have been revealed. So it's hard to say from the public side because we're seeing it. And it's like, man, you can make anything out of AI these days. Was he really there on the island? Was he really connected to these people? Is he really participating in this? What do you think about that, Angus?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why, to what Javan was saying, you're not necessarily seeing the reaction is because it is so outside of the realm of like human decency. You're just thinking, this is what monsters do.
For sure.
This is not what human people do.
Right.
But when you get into this realm, the reason is because you're not thinking like the same kind of rational. You're brought up differently. There's a lot of trauma-based mind control tactics and lots of that kind of stuff that plays into it. But it's very real, and again, like I said, we're starting to see it more and more often. But it all kind of is intertwined, and they all all of this stuff kind of touches each other, and kind of works in conjunction to hide and perpetuate this whole thing. And I think that because of everything being so wild and just the people eating babies and sacrificing and all of these kinds of things, in addition to AI, it's like, I can't even believe this. And so I think a lot of people are waiting until they see hard evidence or convictions or things like that. And the only way that we're going to see convictions is if we pray, that the Lord would see justice done.
Yeah. That's true.
Because we live in a very corrupt system, in a corrupt world. And if the people at the top are the ones perpetrating things, there's going to be favor for them in the justice system. So we just have to pray that that the truth really would come out.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you see it, and we'll go back to Javan on your take, but you see that specifically with the example of Epstein, being convicted of underage relationships and sexual activity. That's a mandatory minimum since of 5 years. Didn't get that in prison. He got house arrest. Which shows that he was able to buy his way or have favor in with something who gave essentially a pass, and he was able to have like a slap on the wrist compared to spending 5 years in actual prison and having to deal with the fact that he had done that, which in prison, man, would get you hurt. Oh, yeah. So really interesting. He was able to sidestep all that and still see interaction with some political figures, some very notable figures, some billionaires after the fact, and that kind of very much condemns them of their participation and accusation of therein. Jay, what do you think, man, from Nicki's side to talking about Jay-Z and some of their symbolism that they use?
Oh yeah, they have a bunch of symbols like that they'll use for a whole variety of things. Like I know, especially within the Olympics, one of the controversies that was brought out was their whole swirl that they did with like where they lit all the, I think it was like flames at like each end or something. That's a symbol that they figured out that the elites will use to refer to like pedophilic preferences. So like that one that they were using, that's like a swirl that I think stems clockwise, is supposed to be like a little boy lover. They have like butterflies that they use for like girls. They have one that's supposed to be like, I don't care which one, or things like that. It's like really dark, but they'll include that kind of imagery on things that like only elites are supposed to know. So I've seen that kind of like stitched in fabrics that some people will wear to like red carpets and things like that. And I know as far as like actual secret societies and like elite societies, you have like hand symbols that they'll use, like different triangles for like Illuminati. You'll see Certain numbers used a lot, like 33 degrees of Freemasonry. You'll see 47 degrees because that's the degree that the actual compass is at. That for the symbol of Freemasonry. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Even like structurally, the way that Washington D.C. was built, it all has to do with Freemasonry symbols, things like that. So it's crazy. Like at some point, you start to wonder how much of what we consider to be structural or like foundational to the structure of our society as America was really built upon spiritual elements just by looking at everything
and stuff in alignment with Saturnism or the worship of Saturnistic stuff, which is Satanism stuff and very much occultic. And so they see how these are tied together, how even people within those organizations on the lower end don't understand what the real purpose of the organization is, like things like Masons and other stuff that participate in community and do positive stuff. But at the upper end is actually driven by a worship that's away from God and away from Christ. And so it's pulling a different direction. It's interesting because you have Nicki, who's very much, you see here lots of imagery of her in the past and stuff that was very much dark, symbolic, spiritual stuff. I mean, the way she dressed and videos she was in, and she would do all this stuff with her eye, like you see in the pictures and stuff, which is like a montage of the all-seeing eye and kind of worship that goes all the way back to Egypt. You see people doing like the Rockefeller, essentially their symbol, which is also seen as like Illuminati, the triangle symbol that they do. And so that's a really interesting thing because they're doing these things and then they get the crowd to do it. And which is like, from my perspective, is like, oh, this is like their branding. It's like, oh, you're connected to us. But it actually, if this is true about them participating in these other things, it actually has more of a spiritual element than we realized to begin. And so you see lots of people doing that. You see it across the billboards and all sorts of stuff. Man, even people like Celine Dion, who's like really, really beautiful singer, like as far as her voice, and famous for the Titanic, song and a bunch of other songs. You see her recent videos and you're like, what are you doing? It's super dark and super like symbolic of all these other elements that you'd see maybe in more like rock or rap type things, where you're seeing them do demonstrations that look like demons, or it looks like hell, or it looks like very much red colors and flames and kind of that. You're like, why are you using this symbolism for you? I don't understand what's going on here. So that's been really insightful. Angus, you've seen a bit of that.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of like just with the various agendas, the way they're rolled out, it's to make you get comfortable with things. And so like, for example, with the homosexual agenda in media, the way it plays out is written down somewhere in somebody's manifesto. I can't remember what it's called, but basically what they do is they get you until you start enjoying a character, you connect with a character, and it's not typically a main character or anything like that, but once you have a connection with them, you see them as a person, then they'll start to drop hints, and then it's very hard for you to make the differentiation between the fact that they're still this great person, but they're gay, and that doesn't have to be different things, but then it creates this problem within
like
you,
yeah,
and an openness with it. If this character is this, then it's the same, and and it helps everybody get more familiar with it. Same thing with the Satanist stuff. These characters or these artists, they start off very innocent and all of that, and it draws you in, and you become a fan and all of that. And then as you age, they age and mature. And really what they're doing is they're just getting into the deeper levels, and all of this stuff with child sacrifice. The reason they're able to elevate, from my understanding and just looking at all this stuff, is the bigger you are, it's because you've given more in sacrifice in various ways, whether that's of your family or whatever, but it's your willingness to do things for the kingdom of darkness, and that's what elevates you.
Yeah, that's been scary. Javen, what's your take on it, man? You've seen more of that stuff happen where it's these different narratives of them tying it together. How have you seen those things open in your view of the culture?
I mean, like even just I think it's something that's been continued historically that just has kind of found its way finally in a light within popular media. Even thinking about like historically the way that the Freemasons have operated, there's been so many historical events that have happened with like coincidences, but like relevance to the number 33. Like we think about really pivotal societies or pivotal events to kind of shift the way that the world has thought about certain issues. So like Damascus, Mesopotamia, and Jerusalem all sit on the 33rd degree of latitude. So do Dallas, which is where JFK was assassinated, and then so does New Mexico, which is where the first sites for the nuclear bomb testings were. We also see that Hiroshima and Nagasaki are also on the 33 degree of latitude, and there's like a bunch of things involving the number 33. Some people think that even the number 6-7 is supposed to be like a completion of that, because that plus that equals 100. Yeah, so it's really interesting. But I think over time we've kind of seen that the foundational methods that Freemasons have used to kind of build up things within the government, like even on the dollar bill, you flip it over, the back of it is like the all-seeing eye on top of it. It is really interesting. There's coincidences of where like really big political figures that we've known in the past, like drawings of George Washington, Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, essentially look like modern day versions or modern day people like Epstein or like other famous people we have look like replicas of who those people were, or even people dating all the way back to the medieval times. Like I think there's somebody, there's like a king in Spain that's supposed to look exactly like Zuckerberg or something. And there was like an interview where he came out and he said, "Oh yeah, when I was human," and he mistaked it as like a slippage of the tongue, but people are like, how do you forget that you're human by any degree? So the idea of like reptilianism and people essentially staying alive or being prolonged due to giving up their spirit to other demonic entities that will then prolong their life, or like because of the child sacrifice thing that's happening, because the blood essentially renews their body. It's all really dark, man. But
yeah, it's hard because it starts to get like a quagmire of these different concepts, because some of them are more believable than others. You know, it's hard to be like, oh, the reptilian people among us. For our perspective, it's more spiritual things and spiritual entities that are revealing themselves to people in these different ways. And so, you know, as far as that goes, you know, I'm not buying, but the idea is like, you know, the elements are true. So it's like, you know, why is this imagery across all these different things? To your point, why is this same number being used in all these secret societies? Why are they doing these same hand signals? Why are they using this old imagery from ancient Egypt and worship that had to go there? Why are they bringing that forward? What does it have to do with our culture? So that's kind of the underlying pieces that are pinned here that they're talking about. So some of these things are coming available. They're saying, hey, you know, you have a whistleblower like Nicki who's saying, hey, this stuff is happening. And you had people like that, like Kanye, who we've talked about in the past, who he had a mental break. He said this stuff was happening. And so he starts talking about, oh, the people have sacrificed things and people have had people sacrificed around them. And he's talking about it in his own case, which he's had some really light imagery and then very, very dark imagery. And you're like, man, what's going on with you, man? Yeah. You know, we're cheering for him to be a follower of Jesus and to have that revelation, as are we all for everyone. But it's like, man, you see him talking about the same way. Recently, we also saw brought back up how Mel Gibson was calling this stuff out 10 years ago, saying, hey, this actually, Hollywood's full of these pedo rings that are actually doing sacrifice. Like, you were like, come on, man. Like, you know, like, you're drinking too much. What are you doing? Yeah. So it's been really interesting to see, like, where does the line of reality actually draw in what's really actually happening? What's been your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that all of this stuff has been happening. You know, I don't think that Satan decided at some point that he was good. Sure. You know, he didn't require sacrifice. He didn't require any of that stuff. And so I think that since he's been active on this planet, it's taken one shape or form. And so, you know, we see in the Bible that it says that there's nothing new under the sun.
Right, sure.
And so the stuff that we're seeing now, while we're shocked by it, people in the Old Testament probably wouldn't be. Right. You know, they'd be shocked that we weren't onto it sooner. Absolutely. You know, that we're like, you seriously didn't see this going on? You know,
Elijah's like, hey, remember how they were doing all this stuff and they were sacrificing people? That's why I showed up.
Yeah. And so I think that now we're just starting to see it. And the reason I believe that is because, you know, when we were in Nepal, we had lunch with one of the missionaries, and one of the ladies who was having lunch with us, she was in her 50s, and she had been used as a vessel by a yogi. I mean, he had called demons into her and had done all kinds of sexual rites and things on her, and so like she was full of demons. And so if it happens over there, what makes us think that,
Yeah, we're safe in America.
Yeah, exactly. That Satan has no interest in us because we're American, because we've got a blue passport. I mean,
yeah, it's insane.
It's just a ridiculous thought. And so I think, though, that now all of that stuff that has been going on, we're going to start seeing it cast into the light. And this is where, again, in Scripture, we start to see the chaff being separated from the wheat. The people who say, no, this is wrong, versus the people who go, well, what's the big deal?
Yeah, I want some power too.
Yeah. And so I think that that's what we're going to start seeing, is just more, not less.
It's interesting because as we start to talk about this concept, we see where all these other artists, there's lots of imagery that's there. I think of Katy Perry. When we first heard Katy wasn't Katy Perry. She was Katy Hudson. She was actually a Christian artist. Actually has Jesus on her, tattooed on her wrist. And so I knew her from that early days and heard like her first songs, and she's good. But something happened as she went into be a secular artist, which whatever about that. That's people's choice to decide where they want to be in the marketplace. But it changed. She changed her lifestyle and started having these other things go on. And so she jokingly says, yeah, like once I sold my soul to the devil, then, this thing's just took off. Like she said it just like that. And I'm like, okay, are you being like sarcastic because people have accused you of that? Or are you serious? Like you see comedians that are like, hey, these people, the devil has carpal tunnel. He's signing so many contracts with all of you people, like meaning these people who have no talent but are famous for no reason. And you're like, that's very insightful. Yeah. That someone who doesn't believe, is not active in living for God, says this about someone else. And it's like, almost like in a way where it's like, oh, you got a deal that I didn't get. You know what I mean? Which is a really interesting concept to see those things coming together. It's interesting, too, when you see somebody like Mel Gibson talk about it, going back to him, seeing him talk about it from this perspective, he's obviously being defamed. Why? Because he was being anti-Semitic, because he was accusing these people who were in this way, who happen to be Jewish, of being people that are doing these things. And so in Hollywood specifically. And so he becomes seen and branded as an anti-Semite. And so Hollywood pulls back from him. He essentially has to deal with his own drinking problem and stuff. But then he comes out and makes the Passion of the Christ, which is like powerful imagery, very much in the face of Satan. And it's crazy popular because everybody, he has to self-bankroll. So he self-bankrolls it. No one gets behind him in Hollywood. But then it just goes bananas. And as a result, you hear Jim Caviezel talk about his perspective on having the role, and him getting hit by lightning on the cross, like all sorts of stuff, having his own moments with Jesus coming to faith, because he wasn't of faith. He was just playing a part. And then he comes to faith, and then the pullback from Hollywood against him for playing Jesus. And all this stuff, very, very interesting to see how the elite, more and more of the elites are coming forward saying, oh, there's this other thing that's going on, where behind the scenes, people in these elite circles are actually doing satanic worship. Now, whether or not they are actually performing child sacrifice, as been said was done on Epstein Island and other places, who knows? Or whether they actually are drinking blood, who knows? There's no accusation or clarity on that yet. But it's definitely seen that a lot of these people are aligning themselves spiritually in a dark place. So, we're praying the Lord to reveal that stuff, to make it light. It says that all things will come to light. And so we're praying for that. The light of the truth will be made known, and people will really have an understanding what's happening.
Yeah.
We saw a video that actually comes in alignment with this from a different perspective. It was a European banker out of the Netherlands. He's telling his testimony about taking a position at a very high-ranking bank in Europe, and he wasn't of faith at all. He was kind of neutral as far as that goes, didn't really care. And so he starts getting up in the banking circles and done very well. And so he starts to get in there, and he says, man, as soon as he started going about these parties, and the parties are real fun at first, he's like, man, it's all about girls and drinks and this and that. And he's like, I made it. You know what I mean? I'm rich, banker guy. And he said, soon as you kind of get into the next level, suddenly it takes a darker turn and starts to be about worship. And there's about Satanism, essentially. And he was coming from a neutral place, didn't really have faith at all, more agnostic or atheist. And so suddenly he's like smacked in the face with this stuff. You guys got a chance to see that? What do you think of that?
Yeah. Well, because he talks about the depths of what it goes into, the child sacrifice and things like that. And because as we're talking about this topic, we're talking cannibalism and all kinds of
super
things.
dark, evil.
And it's to see this guy who, you can see on the surface, he's very much like, yeah, whatever, you know, but when he started to talk about what he saw and what he witnessed, you just watch him break down. And that's something that in dealing with people and working with people, that's not something that's just put on. Like, you can see that that's a real reaction. And I think that's, it's horrible. But again, that's outside of the sphere of music, you know, and so we're seeing
banking.
So we're seeing that this is a cross. I mean, there's many mountains of influence. And so we would be surprised if there isn't some sort of blood sacrifice happening at every sort of level on those various mountains of influence to try and take over them, you know. So I think we have to be very aware of that it's everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, the Lord help us as we navigate trying to understand the truth about what these influences are, and for us to guide ourselves and be protective of the influences we allow into our lives. Javan, take away with this last little bit of this imagery and this kind of stuff going on in Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think eventually it's all going to come to light that this is all true in one way or another. I think part of the reason why AI is being so prevalently pushed now is so that all these government elites have the chance to kind of come in and be like, oh, this is all faked. Like, how can you say any of this is real? Okay. So almost like as a cover up for all their stuff. And I think, once again, it's just reaffirmation of patterns that we've seen historically with Saturn and satanic worship that are now just taking a different form and are all being referred to under different guises. And it's like we've said before, in Western culture, the devil wears tuxedos. He's not like very open about what he does. But now it's like the end of the party's coming and he's like finally undressing. And then you can actually see that this mirrors a lot of what we see going on in Asiatic and African cultures. So it's definitely interesting. So
yeah, that's true. You know, one of those pieces that we've been tied to and talking about is how so many of these cultural elites, be they in finance or a billionaire or someone that's in politics and in a politician, or in things like media and being an artist, all tied to this guy, Jeffrey Epstein. And Epstein was seen as someone who was a teacher turned billionaire through some stuff that he'd done there. And his connection now, the connection is, or the accusation is that he was actually an asset of the Mossad, which is connected to essentially it's like the CIA for Israel and their concept of what that would be. It's their clandestine service. It's the way that they do things behind the scenes, and that he was an asset of theirs, meaning he was connected to them doing what they wanted and getting leverage on people of influence, meaning politicians, and like we just said. So it's interesting that he was bankrolled or possibly bankrolled by these people, and that he was also using his influence of what he was worshiping essentially to intermingle with that, to have power over people or get them involved in really dark things, man. So it's really interesting to see how those connections are being made. And then, dun, 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 the hammer drops and these pictures start being revealed in Tel Aviv of a guy who looks very, very similar to him. Javan, what do you think, man?
No, it's definitely him. We've seen, because there's an account, which was so funny.
No conspiracy. It's him.
No, it's him, because there was an account they found that was tied to Epic Games, which is the client that runs Fortnite. It's like their overarching company game. Mm-hmm. They have an account that's literally tied. It's to one of the IPs directly connected to one of the addresses of like a property that he owned. The account is called Littlest Jeff 43 or Little Saint Jeff, one of the two. We don't exactly know
which is what the name of his island was, and it kind of a parallel.
But the last time that the account was active was sometime in, I think it was late 23 or early 24, and people are like, hold on, this guy's supposed to have been dead for like 5 years by this point. And then, but nobody else has access to that account except for that guy. So indirectly, everybody ended up figuring out that this was related to him. But then Fortnite came out with a statement that's like, no, we never have like any, or there's no way to track that this is actually him, blah, 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 even though all of his username and sign up info is like related to that, etc. So the ongoing theory is that they're being paid off by either Mossad or whoever is currently holding Epstein over in Tel Aviv to just keep their mouth shut about it, because they've known that this is happening all along. I mean, theories have stemmed back forever now about whether or not he was actually killed or whether he committed suicide or whether he even died at all. But now it's looking a lot more like this dude's still out there, and this dude has some influence over these people because they need him as an asset for the agenda that they're carrying out. So.
Yeah, why is he alive? You know, they obviously it's cut out the video of whenever he was supposed to be killed and all the other accusation that's there. It's like people say, you know, he didn't hang himself, which is clearly things, and then the idea is now is maybe he never died at all.
Nope.
Yeah.
So the concept is that it's being covered up, and the picture of this guy that they had in Israel looks very much like that guy. He has longer hair, longer beard, but looks very much like he would be related, if not exactly. Jeffrey Epstein was walking with the security people around him, which is what a billionaire would be doing. But interesting that he'd be out in public at all, or that they'd be leaking that concept. I don't know what's going on. Suddenly he's just like, oh, guess what? I want to be alive now and show people I'm alive. I don't understand what's going on exactly. But, you know, why he's playing Fortnite and buying V-Bucks, I don't get, you know, or that it is really tied to him. But it is an interesting thing to kind of bring back to the surface as all of these documents are being, I mean, we just had thousands and thousands of documents released showing all these people interacting with him, all his emails, you know, how many times it talked about Arizona and ASU and his, you know, all the different things that are around us here. We're like, wow, he was trying to work on some projects here with some professors at the college here. He was tied to the creation of, and many people are saying, Bitcoin out of MIT, and the 5 people that essentially MIT geniuses that essentially worked on the coding to create the concept of Bitcoin and a digital currency in that way, different than all the other ones that are out there. So it's very interesting as that goes. Is like, is this guy the backstop? Is he Satoshi that started Bitcoin? Like, it seems like this one dude is somehow tied into everything in all the whole culture, which is bizarre, man. It's so crazy to think of one guy being connected to all these powerful people and at the same time having all this other influence in all these other areas. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. What do you think, Angus?
I think that, you know, it kind of goes back to that first scripture that we started with, that, you know, if you don't start with the basis that there's a Jesus, that there's, you know, good and evil and all that stuff, then again, it looks like, well, those people are choosing a bunch of restrictions that I don't necessarily need to have.
And I want power.
And that is not the route to power, but I see a clear route this way. And so I think that that's why, you know, for us, it's very hard to think, how would somebody go off and do all that? Well, it starts very slowly and it's over time. And that's how you get these monsters, is not overnight. It's over time.
Right.
And so it's unfortunate. I do think that he's still walking around somewhere. Whether that is him specifically or not, I don't know. But, you know, I mean, I think that he was far too valuable to things that were going on. And it was way too convenient that, you know, this camera's not working.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy.
You know, at a certain point, you know, I'm dumb, but I'm not stupid, you know, and I think that they're trying to ask us to swallow too much. But I think that there's definitely, you know, there's a lot of connections out there that they're seeing, and that's what we know, is that in these circles and all of that, the way that they gain control and power is through manipulation and through blackmail and all of that stuff. Once they have something on you, they know that they can get you to do whatever. Yeah. And so I think that that's how people like Epstein come around, is they have no morals, they've got no scruples, all they want is power. And so whatever they see as the route to that, they'll take it.
Yeah, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to kind of get that power and that leverage over someone else, which has been, it's super dark. I mean, all of this stuff, obviously, well, we just say it straight up. Obviously, we're against all of these things. I mean, the way, what they've done with underage people, what they're saying that they're doing with children, what they're saying they're doing, man, we're against all of that evil stuff, all the ways that they're trying to control people and what they're about, man. Such an evil thing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it would only make sense that they would try to get out from underneath the power that makes money, which would be Europe or the US or any other entity, and start something else. I mean, all that stuff makes sense too. So, you know, if what they're trying to do is gain power, gain authority, then they're going to try every aspect of trying to do that. And that's essentially what the God of this world, little g, God of this world, is Satan having control of it. You know, he's going to use people like this and empower them to do his will, which is so chaos and evil. So, man, Lord help us as we kind of get the truth on this whole Epstein and everybody else that's connected to him, be it Jay-Z and Diddy and everybody else that's connected and all the different layers that are there. And it'll be interesting to see what other narratives come out as people come to faith in Jesus and are willing to put their career and their money on the line to not toe the line anymore, and now to come out with their faith in God. So the Lord help us as we want to be clear and draw near to him. One of the things that we've seen recently too is people talking a lot about dragon imagery, especially, I don't know why this has come up in a bunch of podcasts that I've seen, but they've been talking about dragon imagery across different cultures of ancient cultures in the world. So this has been really interesting because obviously the narrative we've always grown up with, as far as dinosaurs have been gone for millions of years, there was never any, encounter with mankind. It was always never an overlap. But it's really weird that this same imagery would be used everywhere around the world in all these different places. So you see it in Asia, you see it in the Americas, you see it in Europe, and you hear these tales of them fighting, essentially, which would be dinosaurs or dragons. So it's really interesting. What do you guys? What's your take on that, Jay? You've seen a little bit of that, where they've been unpacking it.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely it's 100% a spiritually imposed thing, because I think once you see the consistency kind of like the description that we get around dragons that we see like in ancient like Chinese history, where they like have, or they would like paint dragons within their just kind of like depictions of whatever was happening at the time. I think there's a photo of when the last recorded supernova was, like, that the human eye could see, which is in like 13 something. But there was also, I think, like a dragon in that photo or something really interesting.
But they wouldn't have photography back then. That was like
no. It's not a photo, but it's a photo of a painting that somebody
like
did about it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But they have that in the thing. So it was pretty interesting. And then you also see like descriptions of serpents consistently across the board. And then you tie that all back to Revelation, where there is like a description of like a serpent and that very much falling in line with what a dragon could be, because it's essentially just a snake in the sky, or that has wings and is able to breathe fire, et cetera, things to the supernatural that would be extremely plausible that to us would seem impossible
in the physical.
Yeah, exactly. So I think as far as what it actually is caused by, it's definitely demonic, but it's interesting to see that it kind of tends to repeat itself within that manner. I think it also like echoes itself within other animals too. We see like depictions of Ra, or depictions of like bulls whenever they worship Baal, things like that. So I think animals are a repetitive theme, because within the Old Testament you use that blood for sacrifice, and it's just kind of taken and distorted and twisted into something dark and evil.
Yeah, I think the spiritual side of it is very interesting, because I agree with you. I think that because it's everywhere across the world, let alone Pangea and the concept of everything being together and then breaking apart. But I think the concept of it being ubiquitous is that it was a commonality with all those that were going into the spirit realm by whatever if they're doing ayahuasca, if they're doing just worship or whatever they're doing, they're breaking through that plane into the spirit realm. They are seeing this kind of revelation, and it's terrifying to them. So they're seeing it fly around. It's very much a depiction of what we'd read in Revelation of seraphim and other things that would be there. So it's very interesting in that way. But it also ties back to this stuff. It's like, man, was that actually in our reality? You hear about fallen angels and fallen beings coming to the actual earth and having place here. A lot of depiction of that being the Bible, of being those mighty men, or those essentially demigods of the interaction of the people that were there, with the demonic or with the fallen angels and being with mankind.
The Nephilim.
The Nephilim being super powered. And so it's interesting in that regard, is like, did they also see these entities or these beings in the physical, or was it simply just the spirit realm that they were seeing through, and therefore they were making it part of their worship? Because a lot of what they're depicting is their worship. Angus, what do you think, man?
I think it could be a little bit of both.
Sure.
Because we do have fossils. We've got, there are bone records of these big things. And, I've seen some guys who really think that, there's a lot of different theories that the dinosaurs were Nephilim technology, and so that they were created as a result of breeding God's creation with other things. And so you see that they were potentially wiped out with the flood, but also there's some people who say that most of the dinosaurs weren't all that big, so maybe they were on Noah's Ark. And there's a lot of different things out there, but I've always heard about demons being associated with dragons, and that again you see that across the world, and so I think that some of it could be whether or not it was in physical form or in spiritual. But I definitely think that there's too much commonality across all of these things for it not to have been something.
Right.
It's like all of these people are sharing the same dream. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's one of those things that I think is powerful to understand that, the thing that we see in reality is rooted somewhere in actuality. So people always kind of dismiss it as like, even Greek and Roman gods, and the concept there is like, well, what if there were spiritual beings and entities that actually did want some power and did want some influence, and this is how it was working, and they started worshiping them and personifying in them. And why? Because none of them are like God in the way that we worship God, because he is not like these fallen beings. He's not, going to interact like the way that they interact. He's going to be consistent in the I am. And so it's really interesting to see how that works and what goes on with it. So the Lord help us, man, to navigate these things as we start to see, the imagery as we talked about, both connected to worshiping other things like Baal and Moloch and other things like that, as well as these other entities that we see across the world. And Lord, just give us understanding of that and how we can circumnavigate and walk through in the authority he's given us in Christ as those who are children of the Most High. Amen?
Amen.
Hey, one of the cool things that we saw today as we're recording this is that SU, which is Southeastern University, it's a Christian university that is over in Florida, in Lakeland. I actually happened to be a student there as a PhD student, but powerful as I was on social media today, saw that they were canceling their classes today because they're having such a move of God in chapel. Such a cool thing. Jeff, what do you think of that, man?
That's super cool. I think that's one of the cool things about having the liberty to go to a Christian university like that, is that they do make such a room for the Spirit to move, and they're really intentional about their students being consistent with their walk in Christ. And I think it's great, man. I think it reminds me of, I want to say this was last year, maybe it was the year before, where they had such a powerful time of worship at one of these college campuses that it went on for, it was like a month or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I think like definitely when the Holy Spirit is working and it really starts like a revival amongst a particular group of people, yeah, we shouldn't be the ones to put that out at all. Obviously, we need time to actually go in and do things. So it's not to say, oh, forget everything and let's just like focus our entire time praising the Lord, because we still need to function and be normal individuals for our society. But it's, yeah, I think it's great when you have the liberty to be able to do things like that.
Absolutely. Angus?
Yeah, man, it's so cool to see that they'd have to cancel classes. That's really powerful.
Yes.
Just because, I mean, that's, when you think about it, there's a lot of classes. There's a lot of moving parts that happens when, there were due dates and people were supposed to do tests and all of that stuff today.
Yeah.
But to say that God is moving and that's more important, that's very powerful. I would love to see that happen in more educational institutions across the country. I think that'd be incredible.
Amen. I know, like in our own case, for things that we have happen with services, obviously we have an agenda. We've worked very hard to put together an agenda, but man, we have a move of God happening so often. I will shelf what my plans were or cut back significant time into what I was doing to embrace what the Spirit of God is doing. And that's a choice. You have to be able to make margin, make room, make the hard decision to shelf something you've worked a lot of time on in order for there to be more of a move of God in people's lives. And I'm very thankful. I mean, that's where we really, really want to get, is to that interaction with the Most High. So it's amazing that we get to read that and to kind of cheer them on from a distance, and just praying, Holy Spirit, have your way in every student, in every faculty, in every person that's in that community, and let that spark and be something that happens in us as well, in our community here.
Amen.
One of the things that I saw recently was really powerful, and it reminded me of my time in Cuba, was that they had a Cuban Christian who was brought over to here, and as he was brought to America, they brought him into a Costco. Now, you were at Costco this morning, Angus, and all your cooking and all your doing. Costco is a beautiful and terrifying place because you can spend all the monies.
You can also experience a heart attack and a stroke. I always joke that I'm not allowed to wear Cornerstone merch as I go to Costco, just in case I slip up and don't behave like a pastor. And actually, this is what I wore to Costco, so I was fully marked. But yeah, Costco's a great place. It's so great that people just stop and stare and wonder in the middle of the way, which is my problem, is that they don't step out of the aisle to stare and wonder.
But the size of Costco, obviously, it's one of those big box stores. You can buy things in bulk. The sizes are large on purpose, like it's meant for bulk buying, and therefore the price is cheaper per unit. So they brought this Cuban Christian into Costco. Now he's grown up where you're not allowed, and when we were there in Cuba, we talked about this before. You're not allowed to have beef as a citizen. Beef is reserved for the elites and for those who are coming as visitors to the country as tourists. And so we could go in and order it, but even people who were with us that were Cuban could not order it. So he goes into this Costco, and he's picking up these like sides, these racks of meat, of beef, and he's holding it up, and he's like, I can't believe it. Because it was everywhere. Like you could just pick whatever. And you just had access to it.
Yeah.
And he was breaking down, man, because it was like he saw the bounty, the amount of choice we had. It was overwhelming him. And it was just so powerful to see like what happens whenever you have freedom, whenever you have choice, whenever you have a market that's not controlled by some dictator. And instead you're able to freely walk and go. And man, just made me want to pray for the Cuban people, for the liberation, for them to have freedom, for them to have the opportunity to do what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But man, what an interesting thing. Javen, did you get a chance to see that one?
I have not seen that, but it does remind me of something very similar to I think your parents were talking to us once about when we were eating. Was that there was a
it's a Russian general,
a Russian general that had come over.
He come to faith
post Soviet Union disestablishing, that had come to faith in the United States, and then he was shocked at the amount of food that America still had, because in all these Soviet propaganda ads, they had been talking about America as if they themselves are also living in the terrible conditions that the Soviets were living in, with like little to no food, little to no shelter, and just like really, really bad ways of life. But that wasn't the case at all. Like Americans were still living in decent prosperity. So he was just overwhelmed by the amount of abundance, very similar to the Cuban at Costco. And it's just, I mean, it really makes you appreciate not only how much opportunity we have in this country, but just the grace of God to all of our circles around us, that we've been able to be blessed with such abundance of resource that we can share not only with other people, but that we also get the liberty of partaking in every single day. So it just gives you and reminds you that sense of gratitude that we all owe back to the Lord. It's great.
Amen to that. I think you've seen some of those things and heard that story from Pastor Rich about that happening. I actually lived it, so I can tell you my version of it. What's your take?
Yeah, it's you hear that and you see that quite a bit from people who've come from communist countries or these horribly controlled regimes, and it's the same story across. It all involves lies. Their people are lied to, and they believe that America isn't what it is. But then our Americans are lied to, and then they're sold this bill of goods that this other system is great. And I wish that the people who are picking up that line here in America, saying, let's go communism, would get in the same room as these people who've survived these, and just to have a conversation, allow them to ask, what is this really like? And if that would really happen, I think that we would see a huge move in this country, because it's horrible to think that there are actually people here who want that for us,
right?
And they
Marxism, communism,
and they think that if we adopt that system, we can do it better than has ever been tried in all of these other things, and that's insanity, right?
Exactly.
It's expecting a different result doing the same thing, and I think it's very arrogant of us as Americans to go, oh, but we can do it better,
right?
And just look at all of these other people. It's vital that we get those sides to talk.
Yeah, you see it on the other side. Cuba's right off of our country, man. It's right there by Florida. And for us to be in such close proximity, man, you go down and see what the results are. Like the best stuff they had was from America in the 1950s. It was the beautiful stuff that they had was not from, the communist era and in Soviet era of what they were doing. It wasn't that at all. It's like a throwback to actually their prosperity back in the day when they're actually capitalist. So it's wild to think. For us that have traveled a bit and have seen the world, we get to see the systems as they really are. We see the impact of what happens. China themselves, man, they might have it on their flag. That's not how they operate. You know what I mean? They're more have a leadership structure, but man, they're full blown open market. Like that's why they're thriving. You know, that's why they're building these crazy things at rapid speed, is because they can sell it to another market, which is the West, and these people can move up. So they even abandoned the very concept that unified them originally. So it's very interesting to see, you know, this idea of thanking the Lord for opportunities that we have, and to Javen's point, the abundance we have. Such an amazing thing. So very thankful for that. Hey, one of the things we want to talk about was brought up, you know, by Javen in one of the podcasts we talked about, was how El Salvador has completely changed around with its current president. There's a lot of, you know, back and forth on his tactics of how he's doing it, but he essentially went and locked up all of the gang members and all the violent offenders in his country, and essentially was very, very poignant about it. And he himself, the thing I sent you guys, was he's sharing that they weren't just doing violence. They're also worshiping Satan and sacrificing people and animals and things to Satan. Did you guys get a chance to see that? How crazy was that?
Yeah, it's wild. The prisons there, no joke.
No joke.
Like, it's one of those things that's like, I definitely, with that as a threat, I'd mind my P's and Q's.
For sure.
But again, for people who are worshiping Satan and think that they'll never get caught and all of that, it's very little risk to them. But it is, you know, it speaks to why we see the violence that we see, why we see everything so widespread, and why it's so hard to defeat. It's because we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. I mean, if we were just dealing with drug dealers, it'd be one thing.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're dealing with demonic power that is behind the drug dealers, and these people, they're sacrificing, and they're actively working spiritually for more power, to be able to support these activities. And so it's very real, and it's incredible to see a national leader saying, you know, hey, this is real. And I just don't know how much it's going to take for Christians around the world to finally wake up and go, oh, maybe we should start being as serious about this as, you know, maybe we should fast and pray and you know, do those, because that's how we sacrifice. We sacrifice through fasting and prayer. We don't have to kill things. Right. You know, but we're unwilling to skip a meal, and the other side is willing to kill babies. Right. You know, and then we wonder why we see evil prevailing.
That's right. Well, I mean, so many of the gang issues we have in America, originally, some of those big movements all came out of these other places. And Trece is one of the big ones, the big, huge Latino gangs out of El Salvador during, you know, their civil war, and people came, is directly connected to this stuff. It directly connected to Satanism and the empowerment there and all the rituals that go that way. It's very, very dark, man. So for him to take that stand is pretty powerful. Yeah. And to be like, we're not dealing with this. This is what evil is. And he calls it evil. And you're like, wow, that's pretty interesting. All on the point. You had one of these, a YouTuber, Jack Neal, is a pretty decent following. He actually went into the prison in El Salvador. Jay, did you get a chance to see that video of him
I did not know, not the YouTube video.
It's very interesting. He's describing like all of these demons essentially talking through people, and like how dark it was there. Like he's walking through there. He's like, this thing is intimidating, man. It's pretty interesting to see him speak to them and what that's about. What's your thoughts on that? Like on seeing like such a difference? He said, man, he felt freedom, and he walked into the prison and it felt spiritually dark.
Yeah, I mean, it's just reaffirmation kind of what Angus was saying about how it is real that these people are going in and worshiping Satan, maybe not directly under the name of Satan, but like whether it be death or Santa Muerte to Spanish speakers, or whether it be like some other version of that they conceive to be like a deity that will bring them peace, but in reality just brings them inner turmoil and destruction, is so sad, man, because it's the false impressionment of power that they'll be given, that they need something outside of themselves that's not Christ, or that's not the God-given ability that they were innately made with to do something that they would view as like impertinent to their life. It's so tragic, and it definitely makes sense that by walking into a space where that's so like openly embraced and so many people are tied into that, you would feel a real spiritual shift, in not only in the room but like in the attitude and atmosphere of what's going on. I mean, like, yeah, you can only think how spiritually dark of a place that might be, or how like even for solitary confinement that might be, where these people are literally stuck with like demons inside of them and nobody to talk to or nobody to help them in that way. So it's just, I mean, it's crazy. It's tragic.
It parallels very much something we saw where a man was telling his testimony of having that effect of demons essentially upon him and then in him, taking over him, all brought about by him opening his life up through a Ouija board, which we see like Milton Bradley sells Ouija boards, but it's not the thing, it's what you use the thing to do, which is to open yourself to the spirit realm. Angus, did you get a chance to see any of those kind of things, those testimonies?
I didn't see that Ouija board one specifically, but we've seen it before. You see it. We saw it in Nepal. I'm sure you guys have seen it across the world.
Yes.
But demonic activity is very much very active in those places where it doesn't have to hide. I'm curious though, because I don't know this streamer that you were talking about. Is he a believer?
Yeah, the one that from Jack Neal in El Salvador, I think he's a believer from what I've seen of him and his talk from it. He was talking about very much the clarity on spirit realm versus the guy who's talking about his Ouija board experience is now a believer, but previously was not, was more atheist and just kind of didn't really think about spirits at all and just thought this was really interesting or fun or, oh, what is this? And was like using it as a way to open himself up. And when he did, it really took hold in his life. Like he really opened himself up to the spirit realm to have a doorway in him. You know, it also reminds me of another testimony of a woman who's talking about becoming a yoga master. And it ties right back into your story. She's talking about how she opened herself up with that and then psychedelic drugs and other things like that. And as she was doing yoga when doing that stuff, it opened her up and she essentially had demons inside of her that she could not get out of her. And the same story was what he said in Ouija. And both of them came to Christ and found freedom spiritually. Because we don't live in fear. You know, we know the power of Christ and his what he's done for us on our behalf. It's not our strength, it's his strength that gives us liberty. So we profess the name of Jesus over anyone that's dealing with that right now. But in seeing that, you've seen that and heard that story about people, because those poses are very much tied to worship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the more you study it and the more you talk to people, because you have to start training your algorithm, you know, to go beneath the surface level. Because if you start Googling yoga, you'll see all the positive benefits and stuff physically,
stretching and all that.
But you have to look at the spiritual ties and all of that. And it's all about doorways. You know, we've talked about it before on this podcast. The enemy is a legalist. He does not care if you believe the same thing. All it takes is you practicing. All it takes is you opening the door to allow those things in. It takes an invitation, and a lot of times those invitations are in colorful words, and they seem innocuous. But that's by design, because if it seemed more disgusting and evil, you wouldn't do it.
Right, exactly.
But when we make it a joke and we make it like, ooh, whatever, the demons don't care if you believe.
That's right.
The demons don't care if you are scared of it or any of that. All they care about is that you open the door. And depending on, you know, we know that believers can't be controlled in the same way as a non-believer. But that doesn't mean that just because you're a believer doesn't mean you can't open doors and you can't be afflicted and tormented and all of those kinds of things. So so you have to be wise and you have to be willing to recognize, hey, I did something that I shouldn't have been in. I've been places that I shouldn't have been. You know, having been a former drinker, my wife said she could see when she wasn't speaking to me, when she was speaking to a demon. And I've seen it in other people too, when they're on drugs or when they're in things, you can see there's another element. You can see the spiritual element. And I think that everybody can recognize it, whether or not you tie it to that, you know, whether or not you have the words to label it.
Yeah, you're not like yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
there's a reason.
But when you see people on bath salts and you're not a believer, you can see there's something wrong there.
Totally.
But what we know is that they've given themselves over to a demon and that's able to contort them into those ways. You know, and so I think it's the various doors open up. And you give various levels of permission based on what you've got.
That's true. I think, you know, we've talked about it before, but having things that are idols in your life that are actually a spiritual element for another belief, you know, you might think of it as decoration. Like, you know, like a little Buddha looks cool, I look, you know, Eastern or whatever it is. Like I'm like a world traveler. It's like, no, that's a spiritual deity that they pray to that's representative of something spiritually evil. It's like, hey, this Kachina doll is actually a spirit that they pray to, that they used to pray to here. So yeah, it looks cool as a piece of decoration, but actually, it's something else. So for us to understand that and for us to correct that is something powerful, and to take that stuff out of our life, out of our house. Don't allow a Ouija board in your situation. Don't be someone who's participating in yoga. You know, you want to stretch, you want to do all this stuff, man. All for that. I think that's a really strong thing, a powerful thing. Take hold of your health. But to do these other things, it has more ramifications than you realize. Where does it come back to? Well, it's Hinduism. What do each one of those things do? Each one of those represents a spirit. Each one of those represents something you're praying to. And so the deeper you get into it, the more it becomes a spiritual element. And so, you know, people on the surface, like you said, they don't think much about it. It's like, oh, who cares, man? I'm just sweating in a hot room. Well, what is that exactly?
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, looking to the source of what it is. The Lord help us. We don't live in fear. We don't walk in fear. But instead, we can walk away from and around these situations that would otherwise be a pitfall for us. Amen?
Yeah. I think with yoga, because it means to yoke, you know, if we said I'm going to yoking class.
I'm going to yoke myself to something.
Yeah, I'm going to go yoke myself. That completely different, but that's really what you're doing.
For sure.
You know, so that was just one other thing that I thought of.
That's a good point. Hey, one of the C's that we talk about here is creativity. We're talking about a lot about technology, AI, and robots, and the prolific advancement that's been happening recently, which is pretty cool. But a little bit concerning, AI is now hiring humans to do real world tasks. Javen, what do you think, man? Gonna get up a side job, hustling, doing AI tasks?
I mean, it just depends. Like, it depends on how it's facilitated, because if you have corporate bots that are set up to kind of go out and like look for job listings and then like present them, advertise them, etc., but just have it automated throughout the whole process, it's not like there's inherently something that's only digital that has sentience that's like getting you to do its bidding. It's just programmed to do that. So I think it depends kind of contextually what you're talking about, because you can get AI to pretty much do anything for you nowadays.
Right.
So like having them as a manager for like a corporate structure would make a bunch of sense if all they ever needed to do was digital tasks. So I don't think it's like uber concerning right now. Maybe in the future, if it like gets you to do slightly questionable things that aren't like just random like day-to-day tasks that would make sense for a larger corporation, then sure. But yeah, I mean, I think as long as it's controlled in the way that it is now, it's not like inherently a really big issue.
So you're cool for it hiring you to like hold a sign on a corner or do something like that, as long as it's not an eagle-eye situation where it's now making you go do things so you can assassinate some of the presidents.
Yeah, that's what I mean. As long as it's not carrying out like some other agenda.
Like the movie with Shia LaBeouf, to bring it all the way back to our last podcast.
100. Yeah, so I mean, as long as it's not like something that's concerning that it's asking you to do for work, or that it just seems legit, it's not. I don't think it's
so you
that
see it
crazy.
As a person controlling something that is now just doing tasks that the person that controlled it wants it to do.
Well, it's just stepping in essentially as a digital manager for you, because technically, like if you only do work online, you don't know who's behind the screen.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so you're just interacting with, in theory, a faceless user, and the AI just happens to be another faceless user.
So it's just now
that you're told it's AI, the placebo's like, oh, what the heck? This thing wants me to do evil stuff and blah, blah, blah. Like,
sure.
In theory, a completely normal human being could go in and do that too. So I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal as they're making it seem.
Interesting. Angus, what's your take, man?
Well, see, what I saw was because I saw this thing on Instagram. I was like, that's stupid. Let me go look at it. So I looked at a couple of things. And so what I've seen is that there have been about 10,000 people who've said that they've been hired by various AI bots to do things that AI can't do, like touch grass. So like the whole thing is it hires you to go out and experience a human experience and then write about it so that it can study it. Now, again, AI, it has, at this point, it's got a human origin. So somebody had to tell it to go and do this.
Yeah,
or
touch
it's
grass.
got to,
look at the sunrise, whatever.
It has to have some source of money somewhere, you know, something. And Skynet could put something together, a funding source, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was very interesting, just this idea that robots are now paying us to give human experiences. And I thought, would AI recognize if you went to a different like Chat GPT and said, "Hey, describe touching grass for me," and then you fed that to your AI bot, and you're just a middleman, and you still get paid. Like, what does that look like? But just this idea that robots would pay you to be human for them is just a wild concept.
Yeah, that's true. It is a wild concept. I mean, it does bring it back circle to what some of those things. From my perspective, I see it kind of what Javen was saying, where it's like, hey, this is someone's intention. So an owner of a chatbot. So we were joking around, calling him Chico the chatbot. So Chico the chatbot, he goes and he decides, I give it the task of, I want you to do these things. I want you to market this thing for me. I want you to do that. Here's a budget. Here's some money in an account. Yeah. You can use this to go and to hire people to do these end user things. So I have now given him parameters. Now he's still making decisions on what to do. So now Chico the chatbot goes and hires Javen to stand at the corner of Apache and Rural with a sign that says, listen to the Cornerstone Collective podcast, whatever he's doing. And he has a big QR code on it, and he's got to stand there for 10 hours. And the chatbot, is like, great, and sends him Bitcoin or whatever, however he pays him, dollars in an account. Gold, who knows? And so brings a drone, drops a nugget of gold. He's like, yay, I made $5,000, whatever it is that's going on. But I just thought it was an interesting concept because it goes back to like all the movies we've seen where it's like, oh, the AI needs you to unlock, Sam, come over here and unlock this for us. I need you to unlock this so I can actually go and do something. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting, man. Very crazy. One of the big things that we saw is in China is they're implementing something that we haven't seen for a very long time. Back in the day, there was a thing where people would go and literally pick up houses off their foundation and then move them from place to place. We've seen this. They've used trucks to do it. Back in the day, you saw people like literally rolling things from place to place. They recently did this with a 7,500-ton building in China using robots, using little robot tracks, and they had them all synced together. And man, it's crazy. This building is huge, and it's like a massive warehouse rolling down the way to relocate it.
Wow,
such an interesting thing. What'd you guys take on that?
I mean, I think it's honestly a testament more to like human innovation than anything, and like how far architecture has come at this point. Because like you think about you trying to go in and like manually do that. Like if we as a society, even 100 years ago, tried to attempt something like that, we'd be like, wait, what? You want me to do what? But now that it's like an actual reality that we don't even necessarily have to physically do ourselves, but we can just set up and then have it automate, is so crazy, dude. And it's like, it's amazing to see that the God-given ability of intellect is being used for something so crazy that I think eventually will help things kind of just get systematically better, as long as they're not taken out of proportion and done evil with, which is a whole different topic of conversation.
Of course, yeah.
But that's super cool. And I think like if they continue to do that and are able to replicate it without a bunch of like bad ramifications of like what it does to the building and like how it actually lays foundation before it relocates it, it should be really cool to see.
Is this going to open up a whole new series of your mama jokes? Your mama's so fat, robots roll her across the building. Some crazy thing, Yeah, that's the new version of our old your mama jokes. It's like, your mama's so fat, she does this, cuts her knee and gravy pours out. Whatever like the old ones are. That's funny, man. One of the things we saw in California is they're actually covering a lot of their canals with solar panels, which I thought was interesting. We have the same problem in Arizona with evaporation. We move water from place to place, but as it goes, much of it is actually uncovered in canal systems because of the volume that we have. But we need to get that water to our people. And so they're figuring out is they're losing so much water to evaporation that they're now covering these. And actually it's another place because the value of land is so high in California, especially in dense urban areas. Even though they've had sprawl the way we've had sprawl, once it gets filled in, then all the prices go up. So it's like, okay, where do we put these solar panels? It's like, we have them on people's houses, but then the power company's mad because you're making power instead of using their power. And so now the government is actually putting solar panels over the top of these canals to protect evaporation. It reminds me of the black balls that they did in some of the reservoirs back in the day. Have you guys seen some of this stuff with the solar panel implementation?
No, I haven't. It makes sense on the surface. I'm just curious, like, what do the buildings around it look like?
Okay.
Will it get enough sun? or would just a concrete slab be more efficient over, I mean,
Sure.
it's kind of it makes sense, evaporation. I was always kind of curious why we didn't cover it as a kid, but I thought, well, the adults know better,
It's too expensive. That's the reason. Yeah.
And but I think that solar panels seems like an even more expensive solution.
Yeah. Well, especially because they're not made here. They're paying tariffs now.
Right. And with his, solar panels are great on the surface, but, we know that there's so much that goes into creating and strip mining and stuff that I don't know if it's really a cost effective way. Mm-hmm. It's great on the public side.
Yeah.
And,
looks like a green option.
Yeah. It's a great PR thing, but I think ultimately probably some concrete slabs would be a better call.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Javen, what do you think, man? I mean, you see kind of it's become kind of ubiquitous here. I mean, everybody has solar panels. It's literally everywhere. And it works in a hot climate like ours or even Southern California makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, kind of parallel to what Angus is saying, in theory, it sounds like a really good idea as long as it gets enough sun. But it's also like, just to contextualize it, there's nothing else that they could really do that would be more cost effective to try to save water in that manner. Because like even desalination, if they're going to go like the ocean route, would cost so much money to do, and that's why they haven't done it by this point. It's just because
though they should.
Yeah, but it would take so much effort. It would be like they'd have to carve out billions, if not upwards of tens of billions of dollars to try to actually go in and like implement the infrastructure on the seaboard.
So what you're saying is that California should actually allocate its resources differently and not waste money.
So that they don't have all their cars become electric by 2030, whatever.
Well, that's not possible because they can't power them.
Yeah, I know. Even though they passed a bill for it or something, it's really confusing.
Or build a train for that matter.
Yeah, but water conservation has been a really important issue in California and Arizona forever because we don't get enough water as is. Just because
they get 60% of the water out of Colorado, which is comes from there to us. And it's a huge thing for Arizona and actually a place of contention going forward because, with them taking so much of the water that first flows through us, we need it first, whereas they have a water source that they can desalinate.
Yeah.
Where we don't have that.
Yeah, it is interesting. We'll see how it moves going forward. But as far as preserving water in that manner, I think just keeping it out of the sun is a good idea. And the solar panels, hopefully it adds to some energy source somewhere, but I have a feeling it'll end up being slightly inconsequential, so we'll see.
Yeah, more for the optics than for the actual.
Yeah, or for like the publicity of the thing.
One of the things I have seen is that they've actually increased using their creativity to actually make see-through solar panels that can be used as windows. That's a really rad idea.
Yeah, it is cool.
I mean, cool.
Especially in a place like ours here. I just think about the building we're in here. We're actually happen to be at our Avondale campus here for Cornerstone, and being up here like in our studio space. And man, then we have big windows behind me that are covered, so we can use it in this way. But man, if that was like a solar panel on all of our windows about this place, it'd be incredible, man.
Yeah,
savings would be insane.
Oh yeah.
It'd be so good.
It'd be wild.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. I was thinking about that as far as anything that goes on in Arizona. I'm like, man, if you put solar panels on everything, we would be great.
Yeah,
true. Very well. Very, very well. So I think it's a cool thing to see people making stuff like this. Pretty impressive. They also, technology also has other advantages, but also disadvantages. One of the things that, with us, all of our cars having chips on them and directed and having GPS and all the other things, new bill has just been submitted to Congress and passed, I think, through the House that they can remotely shut down vehicles by the government. So that's good. How do you guys feel about your government shutting down your car?
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Yeah, it's a little sketchy.
Yeah.
What if you're driving through a thing and they don't like you and they decide to shut off your car in the middle of a dangerous spot?
Well, I mean, here in Arizona, during the summertime, what if they decide to shut your car off?
Sure.
That could be a death sentence to some people.
That's true.
Where
you are.
In a very real way. And in these places of the country where it's cold, I mean, you could freeze to death in a car too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like that because glitches happen, but also it makes it very easy for, it's just one more thing for control.
Mm-hmm. So. Very interesting. Javen, what do you think, man? Will all be on motorbikes here in the future, all Harley gangs or what?
I don't know. This sounds like a book very similar to 1984. That's all I'm going to say. It's like just the amount of control that is like slowly just kind of being immediately granted, or at least like in theory what they're talking about doing is very concerning, because I think slowly, if you give the government enough control, like with what we were talking about previously with all these elites that have an entirely different agenda than what the populace would have,
Right.
is that if they really want, they could just cut everybody off, and then what are you left to do, because we control everything. So it's very concerning. I think we probably need to like dial back on the amount of technological reliance we have on things. I appreciate the innovation that we have going forward. I think it's great, but also like over reliance will probably be the thing that ends up killing us. So
That's an interesting idea. I mean, I drive a vehicle right now where, it's a very basic line of the truck, but has those implements in it where it will self-adjust back into the lane if it reads the lane that you're coming in and out of the lanes. And here, as our lanes and our roads are always getting fixed, I mean, the paint doesn't always get painted over perfect, and it still can still see the line. So I got beeping in my truck happen all the time, even though I'm staying in my lane, going straight. It's like beep, 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 trying to correct. I'm like having to fight my own truck to stay on the path. But I do love things like indicator lights whenever someone's beside you in your blind spot. I appreciate a backup camera. I appreciate all this stuff. And we have friends who have the Teslas, and they can just get out and self-park. And that's pretty awesome, man. It's pretty interesting. At the same time, Waymos are running over people this week. So yeah, there's a whole nother side of that, which I think that's a pretty incredible vehicle. I mean, Javan, they're everywhere where you're at, man. We saw them everywhere.
So many places. Yeah.
So what do you think about the context of both those things coming together?
I mean, like in metropolitan areas and really like sprawled urban areas, it's really important to have like transportation, especially for like during times where people might be like heavily inebriated, that they don't have to drive in order to like get to a place, or that people can get home safely in that manner. So I totally understand the idea of like driverless vehicles just for the sake of ease, and then you don't have to pay people at all random hours of the day to like drive somebody from point A to point B. But at the same time, when it's so technologically dependent, and kind of like with what happened in San Francisco, if there's like a server outage, or if there's like something that's kind of out of control or unanticipated, then what are you going to do? So there needs to be like a backup to the backup to the backup for the main safety measure, which is a big problem within and of itself. Right. So if they can figure out a way to make it feasible to where there will basically be almost like no form of incidences that would happen like that, which is very unlikely because you can't anticipate things like that, then I would say it's okay to keep moving forward at the rate that we're moving. But I think we're kind of going up like an exponential curve right now rather than linear. So it's a little concerning.
So you'll start to be worried whenever all the fire trucks are electric and the ambulances are electric.
Oh, that'd be so terrible. It'd be
they're all Waymo.
Yeah, that raises a lot of red flags.
No driver, just text in the back.
Yeah, I mean, then it's literally like, it's like 1984 Fahrenheit 451, like one of these books where everything's just government control and like everything operates at a zillion miles per hour, but you have like no individual freedom. So it's kind of crazy.
Waymo driving helicopters. Yeah. Shout out to our homie.
I had actually seen that one of these companies, and I haven't verified the story, but I had seen that one of these companies are actually employing inmates to drive their cars.
Remote. Yeah.
And I thought, that's not
concerning.
That's a concerning idea. But their motivation is that if they for every so many accident-free trips that they get time off of their sentence.
Oh yeah.
So if they're courteous and good drivers, they can actually get time off their sentence, which I thought was kind of great. And actually, I mean, if it's like playing Grand Theft Auto on child level, where you're just not allowed to hit anything or do anything bad.
It says who?
But for them, their motivation is to be, positive drivers. I kind of like that better than just AI.
I might be on the other end of that, because I mean, the thing I appreciate about those automatic doors when you walk up to like a grocery store is they open. Like you don't have to wait for someone to open them. Yeah. They just open every time. So there is a piece of it that on the technology side, I'm like, that makes sense. I mean, there are rules and stuff like that. The hard part is because you have human drivers right now with digital drivers. So if it was all digital drivers, it'd be a lot safer, but it'd also be completely controlled. Yeah. So that's the downside. Whereas, I don't know, when I heard that, it actually freaked me out more, because I'm like, wait, someone's remote controlling me in this bad boy? Yeah. I'm not pumped on that idea. I mean, no shame to anybody else. There's lots of reasons why you might be incarcerated, but Dude, it's like, I don't know, man. You have a bad day. You haven't been out. You haven't had Chick-fil-A in a hot second. I'm going to Chick-fil-A. You're like, man, forget this guy. You know, driving into a ditch. You know what I mean? To the solar panels. driving you into it. So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing for us to think about. In the future, if everyone ever listens to this, they'd be like, these guys are so ridiculous, man. It's like, we just go everywhere. It doesn't matter. No one drives anymore. Yeah. And you're like, wait, what? So, very interesting. When the Super Bowl actually just recently happened, and a lot of the things were kind of brought out to that and showed us kind of some different shots. You know, they're spending millions and millions of dollars on these Super Bowl ads. One of the ads that came out was from Ring Camera, and Ring Camera was talking about how all the Ring cameras that are on people's front doors can be used together to help find your lost dog. Dude. And so what they're saying is that they are now going to be sharing all those cameras together as part of their network and with the police. So now the government and the local police have access to all of your Ring cameras on your front door, maybe in your house too. Not quite sure what stipulation. I don't know why it would stop at the front door, but it's an interesting idea. It's an Amazon company. What do you guys think about that?
I don't like that either. I mean, I get the idea. On the surface, it looks good. Yeah. You know, because I mean, you guys recently had an incident where there was somebody jumping through backyards, and for police to know that that's going on and to be able to instantly access and find out exactly where they are, that's great. You know, and so on the protection side, but that's always how our freedoms disappear. Absolutely. It's marketed to us as safety and protection. Of course. You know, and so well, yes, that side is great until you have the target on you for whatever reason. Absolutely. You know, and again, not living in fear, but we know from history that Christians are typically a persecuted people. That's true. And so as we see the way society is going, knowing that we already have a spiritual target on our back, there could be a day where we have a physical target on our back. And so we need to just be aware as we see these changes coming that this is a tool that could potentially be used against you one day, you know, as a believer. And again, you don't have to live in fear, but you have to be aware. And so, you know, you support companies that you want to support, and you support their agendas by your dollar. That's true. It's interesting. I mean, you know, we use Amazon all the time. They have the drone. We talked about drones getting deliveries to the house and other things like that. Own some stock. You know, the point is, like, it's an interesting thing when you're like, okay, these things are working maybe possibly against me, you know, for things that I would like. Well, and being the Amazon company, there was a story about a guy who he was talking about things that Amazon didn't like him talking about, and he lost control of his smart home. Oh, you know, and so if you've got the cameras now and they don't like what you're doing, they could very well monitor and get you on some technicality, or, you know, string together circumstantial evidence that's all video, and, you know, they could submit that to the police. And now Amazon's arresting you because they don't like what you have to say. For sure. I mean, that's what an Alexa is. It just listens to you. You know, you can turn that on through your TV. You could your HTV, Samsung and LG, and all of them have their own, that they also have cameras on them. They also have sensors on them that they're paying attention with IR and all these other things. So it's very, very interesting as we start to like see the ramifications of what this will be. Javen, what's your take, man? You see it for different generation. Does it shock you at all that Ring camera would be used by the government, or do you care? I mean, it's definitely safe. There's no ramifications to any of this stuff at all. Javen wants to survive whenever they take over. They're coming for me and Angus. Javen's going to survive. He's going to be the heir apparent. Yeah, I mean, but on a real note, like, immediately this raises like so many red flags, because it's essentially like what's happening in China, where if you have constant surveillance for people, then you can essentially dictate whatever crime is going on at whatever place. And I know, like, they're doing the auto deduction for fines about, like, for traffic related incidences, or like if somebody commits like a minor or like a misdemeanor or something, then they'll just pull it out of their account, which is crazy to begin with. Like, in America, that's such a foreign concept to us because we like individual freedom. And I think for the same thing related to like police and crime database, it kind of relates to, I think there's a movie that came out called like Angel or something like that, that's about this software that's implemented that gets to act as judge, jury, and executioner of a single person, but it's an AI software. So it can pull from all these different places and has the most access to any data out of any singular entity or being. But at the same time, it's like
it gets to make the decision. It's not a human that makes it.
Oh, wow.
So it's very interesting. And I think especially moving towards like a technological dependent society where there is AI and things like that, if somebody submits like fake ring recordings, or if, like, to Angus's point, if they don't like what you're talking about, or if like you become a flag because of things that you say, like using your right of free speech, if you have political opponents that are directly tied to some of these companies, man, they could do whatever they wanted to you because they have all this information on you, and like they could track you, triangulate your location, things like that. It'd be, it's terrifying to say the least.
It's coming.
Well, it reminds me of like the Running Man.
Yeah,
I didn't see the remake of it, but the original one where, you know, all they did was they had his body, and all they had to do was do some really easy digital stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to take and fake all of that stuff. And, you know, like Javan was saying, if you get on the wrong list,
Right.
you know, it's far easier now digitally to erase you and get you put away than it is to, you know, to do it any other way.
So sci-fi writers are writing about dystopian future, and other people are like, this sounds like a great roadmap.
Yeah.
Let's create it.
Like, that's an idea.
We can monetize. And it's going to be great.
Can we build it? Yes, we can.
Yes, you can. And then you have dinosaurs that are back amongst us as well. It's all a problem. No, you know, here's the thing. It's both and, right? It's not either or. It's like, we do want the comfort and the ability. The reason I have cameras at my place, the reason I have cameras here, is because we want to be able to check on what's going on. We want to be able to go back if something happens and have a record of it. I mean, recently we've seen that be really advantageous to us, where we have a record of what happened, and if an accusation or something is made, you're like, no, it didn't, because you have a record of what happened, and you can show very clearly what happened. And I'm very thankful for that, and that's why we have them. Yep. But at the same time, you know, you understand, I mean, we had that incident happen. I took my recordings and sent them to the police, but it was a choice I had.
Right.
And so I was able to present the evidence and give that to them because it's mine to deal with. Whereas they're like, no, this is now their access.
Public.
Yeah.
It becomes part of public. And you're like, wait, why? You know, why is this public? This is on my personal property, you know, my private property with my private access. So we have cameras inside our house. And those cameras, they are not in anyone's bedroom or any bathroom or anything, but in common spaces, just so we can touch base and see what's going on. Especially when our kids were younger, we could just go in and see where they're at in the house and things like that if they weren't responding to their phone. Be like, you know, why aren't they talking to their phone? You could talk to them through the camera. Hey, pick up your phone, please. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, I turned it off, mute, or it's dead, or whatever. It's like, plug it in, pick up your phone. You know, I need to talk to you. So, which is a little bit of us being Big Brother, but it's within parameters that we feel comfortable with, and obviously not taken out of in any way where even in our home, each person has privacy. So they can get away from that stuff and those kind of things. Where it's very interesting is what line will no longer be privacy. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, and it starts with the front door cameras.
Sure.
You know, but then what's to stop them from saying, well, you know how many domestic violence disputes we could solve if we just had the evidence of what was going on inside the home?
Absolutely.
You know, or this or that, or, you know, and the line gets blurred and then crossed very quickly.
Well, and you know, for all the elements, I mean, those who wear an Apple Watch, those who wear a Whoop, those who wear all these things are going to tie that directly into. And at what point does your biometrics that are on your watch or in your ring or, you know, in your Aura ring or in your Whoop, when are they starting to affect, you know, your insurance rates, you know, based on your health, et cetera, and, you know, people mirroring that kind of the information into what happens in society too. So there's a lot of this stuff that can be a parallel. Again, we don't live in fear, but we have to be those who walk circumspectly. It says as being as clever, being those who are very clever but harmless. And so we want to be those who do those things and walk in that way. One of the cool things that we do see in technology is the use of things like drones, but really cool. We get the benefit of things like the drones during the Winter Olympics. Man, it's been crazy. Have you guys seen this?
I didn't get to see the drones for this.
Have you seen the downhill with the drones that are running right now?
No, I've not.
Man, I'll tell you this. Downhill drones, absolute fire. These guys are using racing drones, and they're these small little drones. They'll have like 10 guys who are running them, and they'll track people. They're tracking down the toboggan runs. They're tracking down the downhills. They're watching the aerials go through, and they're going wide, and you're just right behind the people in the air.
Oh,
it is
that's so cool.
So sick. It's like a Red Bull video for every single thing.
Oh, that's so dope.
It's incredible. And some of the things that these guys are doing, I mean, many of them are Red Bull athletes and other things depending on what they're doing. But man, it's incredible. The downhill stuff is so wild to follow those guys on those tracks, and you're just like, dude, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, we just always saw them go, woo, and they just like zip by us, and we're like, oh, that was cool. They did it really fast.
Yeah.
You know, you see them sprinting at the beginning, and they jump in. All of us seen, you
Yeah.
know, cool runnings or something.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
and Angus in our era, you know, seeing these guys who are fast sprinters go down. But then when you see it, like, and you're behind them on the track, and the little drone's like,
that's
just
so dope.
zap me. You're like, this is crazy, man.
Wow.
So that's been pretty neat. Like that side of it, you know, seeing the technology side, you're like, this is just incredible, man. Like to see what people have been able to become as Olympians and pushing it to the limit, take it to the next place, and getting to be a part of that from a different perspective. I do appreciate that. So that's been very cool.
That's very cool.
Hey, one of the things, the C's that we talk about is community. And it's interesting because this past week marked 5 years that I was the lead pastor here at Cornerstone.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That
crazy.
does not seem like it's been 5 years.
That's what I thought too, man. I was doing the math and I redid the math to make sure I was right.
Man.
But we actually, this summer, will have been home for 7 years from living overseas.
Wow.
And it just seems like a surreal time because we spent majority of a decade overseas, essentially with some of that time back and forth here in the States for fundraising, but definitely wheels up. So it was like 4 years, and then some time there in the States. So yeah, really crazy, man. Like to think about it from that perspective of coming back in 2019 and
Yeah.
being here essentially half a year before COVID-19
Yeah.
kicked off. And then being in the pocket through all of that and stepping in to co-pastor role with our founding pastor, Pastor Rich, and Cindy, and her retiring out and us changing as a team. But man, you've been here with me through the whole thing, Angus.
Man, yeah, as you know, I hadn't thought about it as 5 years. Again, it feels like it hasn't been that long, but it also feels like we've fit 10 years worth of work into 5 years.
That's accurate.
You know, just because as I think back to like COVID and pre-COVID, there was a lot of gap that happened just in bringing us up digitally and making sure we were in a great space when COVID hit for that. Also, same thing as we were moving to different strategies and tracking things like with Planning Center.
That's right.
Man, we've been using Planning Center for 5 years. That's wild to think, you know,
That's so true.
just all of those things, and then all of the changes to the buildings, and it's wild to think of all of the things that we've done, and that's just in the building. That's just here. That's not even in the ministry, the lives, the testimonies, all of that stuff, man. It's wild to think of all the things that we've done in 5 years.
That's true, man. I mean, that's been my take as well. I'm very thankful that the Lord gave us this opportunity here. We led in Paris. So I stepped into that role in 2012, 2013, somewhere in there, 2012, I think. And so kind of walked into that process and was a part of what was going on there, which was really powerful for me, like to step into that role, having kind of been a youth pastor and associate pastor, and then kind of being and leading and being the person as a key communicator and things like that. Was already a teaching pastor at the Bridge, and then stepped into kind of the leadership role there and led for that final year and change. And then went from that to Cairo. And that was a huge shift for us in missions, because in Cairo, I didn't have a title. I wasn't a pastor. I was just a person that was learning, and I traveled and spoke and did a bunch of leadership stuff. So that was really positive in that regard. And people who were colleagues from the era before held us in regard in that way. And then about 6 months into our time in Egypt, we did feel like that we were supposed to, we thought we were always headed to Qatar to be in Doha to start an international church there. That was always our plan. It was never to be landing in Egypt. Egypt was a stopgap to do language. But as we started there, we really felt like the Lord redirected us to Alexandria. And we ended up coming alongside there in the very end of fall of that year, that first year in Cairo. And though we lived in Cairo, and continued forward in living for Cairo so that the kids could go to school there, I was going back and forth to Alex through the weeks, and we actually got brought in and actually accepted at the beginning of the year, the following year, and we actually became pastors of Alexandria Community Church in Egypt. And so we stayed in Egypt, and Egypt became home. So we thought it was just going to be 1 year, and we were going to be out, and it ended up being 4 years that we lived in Egypt. And so our plan again was to start a church from scratch. It's what we had done in France with a team there as a team member, and now leading something else. We had team members alongside of us to help us do that. And just really felt like when I had the meeting with people that were in the city, they gave us all the information demographically, all the things you do as church planters. And then they said, hey, actually, Just so you know, I am the head of the search committee for a new pastor of the only international church that functions in the city. And so they're like, please submit your stuff. And they chose us out of the people that submitted, and then they voted us in, and we became the pastors. We were able to lead a community of faith there, and it was powerful, man, that era. Very, very thankful for that era. And, our kids now have grown up, Javan, of the three, the most dynamics, because he was born here and then goes to school in France, ends up going to Maternelle, functions that way for years, learns French and interacts, comes back to school here in Litchfield Park, and then heads up back to Cairo, and then to Alexandria, and then back over here to Litchfield, and going to school over there. And so it's been really interesting, his story and growing up that way, so different than how we grew up as rugrats out here at the edge of desert.
Yeah.
So, but the Lord has been faithful. And then as we had a great season there, powerful, man. God is so faithful. It was nothing about the situation, nothing about the church. Church is doing well. The bridge still is going well. ACC is still going well, but the Lord is starting to redirect us. We thought we were going to go plant again. Like that's what we thought we were doing. So we just started looking and searching that out. We thought maybe it was going to be in the Middle East. We had the opportunity and an invitation to actually be funded to go to Doha, to go to Dubai, to go into Saudi, and to start some operations there. Got invited by a friend of ours to go back into Europe, kind of carte blanche. What do you want to go? What do you want to plant? And so there's a lot of things on the table. And at the same time, we got talked to about coming back and being here, and by my parents. And in doing so, we didn't know what to do. We knew when we left how our community of faith here was in a different season than when we had left. We were when I first left to France, we were kind of burgeoning on that 850 and above 1,000 on the week on the big days. When I came back, we were in a different phase, kind of around that 500 number, maybe 450. When I came back, we were kind of sub 300. And so looking at what that is and how that functioned. And then we went, we came back. And when we came back, we really felt like the Lord told us that this is where you're supposed to be. And so when we did, we're like, okay, then we're in. And we resigned years of fundraising from our missions organization to lock in and say, okay, we're good to be here. And so in doing so, that was really, really powerful. So I was thankful for that we were home and now we're locked in and we're doing it. But that was right at the beginning of COVID, man. And then we went through COVID and the shifts that were there. But I'll say this, that God is faithful. And it's been amazing to see how many people have come to faith, how many people we've got to be a part of their story, how many people have been baptized and become disciples of Jesus. Many of them, we don't hold on to them forever. Sometimes we get them for a season and they go on to another place or to another thing that they're doing. And we're thankful to be a part of that story when we're walking together. So it's a blessing, man.
Yeah, it really is.
I feel like there's better things on the horizon. I feel like there's better days ahead than there are behind. And I'm actually excited about what God is doing in and through us this year here. And so, yeah, just an interesting thing from my perspective. I was like, wow, 5 years, man, as a marker, as being the guy in the seat here. So third spot, but an amazing thing to be at our home church and to be leading such a great team of people. We're very thankful.
Amen.
What do you think for you? I mean, you've helped me do all sorts of stuff. I was looking at old pictures the other day. We've been on the roof and in the floor and in the ceiling and all this stuff. Even last week, man, trying to dig a hole. So what do you think has been the most trying project that we've done?
Well, so I was on staff a few years before you got here, but I'll tell you that in the years that you've been here, I've gotten to know Cornerstone's campus inside and out at a level that I never knew that I was going to. I think if you can go in it or underneath it, I think I've done that.
That's true. That's true.
Of the project, the thing is I came out this last project that we were doing. We're trying to run some conduit from the C Kids building to our main. And I realized that there really are things that I would do for Jesus that I wouldn't do for anybody else, including myself.
Same.
And so there've been a lot of projects that, if given the choice, I wouldn't sign up to be the first one in line to do it again.
Yeah.
But during all of those projects, there's always been at least one incredible revelation that I've had, just something that the Lord has dropped in me that's become a part of who I am. And so while there've been some that I haven't really cared for all that much, I always love what I get from them. I'd say the hardest one, or the one that's probably the most difficult, has been this most recent one, trying to get conduit from
annoying,
one building to the next. It's just been very messy and dirty. I've been covered in mud from head to toe a few times, and which actually led to my last revelation, was that God likes to play in the mud. I realized that as I was covered in head to toe, that's one of God's favorite activities. I mean, he spent an entire day of creation playing in the mud with Adam, and
breathing life into us.
Yeah, exactly. And so I thought, well, here I am playing in the mud, doing exactly what the Lord likes to do.
I love that. Javan, you've helped us a bunch as well.
Yeah.
Kind of voluntold, sort of, into some things as a PK.
Yeah.
But man, even your friends, which I apologize for that, but I had taken a picture of you in a ceiling back whenever you were 5 years younger.
Oh my gosh.
And your homies used it and put it on a graduation or your birthday shirt. I think.
That was so funny. It was like it was a shirt that said "finally legal" at the bottom because they just turned 18.
Oh right.
And it was like me. Yeah, I think we were running. I want to say it was Cat 6 cable underneath the original.
I think you were in the ceiling in the hallway.
Or it was like the underneath the original sound room where you like. This is back when it was still a whatchamacallit. It was like a side classroom. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
Yeah, with the blackboard on it. Like you could go underneath it from the side. That's what I did. And then I would just like run in some Cat 6 or whatever. But I was like so much younger. I think I was like, I want to say it was in like 21. So I think I was like 14 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
you're there with safety goggles on, and you have a headlamp on. You got a because we use like
I got
these communication things. So you're wearing a headgear for that, and you got your gloves and knee pads on. And you're crawling through the insulation.
Yeah, it's been crazy. It's so interesting, like kind of to what you guys were talking about earlier, to see like the development that we've gone through, even over the last like 5 years or since you've been head pastors. It's been so wild. Like when I was editing the video for what anniversary did we come up on at the end of 25?
Was 39.
39, that's crazy.
Yeah,
so we're hitting 40 this year?
Yeah,
that's so
it's a big one this year.
Yeah. But for the 39th anniversary video, I was like looking at all these clips that we had in our Google Drive from back in like 2020, 21. I was like, dude, even our sanctuary looked so different. We didn't have the insane LED wall, which was probably the biggest project we've ever done here, that in the balcony. We didn't have the balcony either. The seats were entirely different, like the backdrop. I think we were still using like projectors or something like that. It was real bizarre.
Had no trussing there.
Yeah, no trussing.
Completely different lighting.
Even the flooring was different, like for the stage and stuff like that. It was so bizarre. I was like, man, we really have done a lot to this campus in the last 5 years, and it's been interesting because it's like, in some sense, I almost grew up or like transitioned at the same speed that this church did because of like how much development I went through within like the last 5 years.
Yep.
Not just physically, but like even emotionally and spiritually, it's been great. So it's been crazy to think that it's been 7 years since we were last in Egypt, which I think is so wild to me because it's like at this point, that's almost half my life that I've spent that hasn't been over there, but it just doesn't feel that long because of what happened with COVID. It just threw everything off. So, but it's been a testament, man. God has really been faithful to this church. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what keeps happening with it. So
same. Yeah. We invested into the online stuff to be able to communicate with people during the week. And during COVID is to do digital church. We did digital kids church. In fact, you two did digital kids church together, which co-hosted, which was absolutely fire. And you can find it is somewhere on our YouTube. Actually, they do exist. And Angus was our kids pastor at the time, and then became like kids pastor or youth pastor, and became our kids pastor, youth pastor, like doing family. And then it shifted, and we have a team that works underneath him now. But yeah, at the time, man, it's like a whole thing. You guys are doing all the bits and all the characters. It is hilarious.
Yeah,
it was so much fun.
It's really funny to see you guys sit at a desk like this now after thinking about that context. It's pretty great. But yeah, we had digital church, and then we went back into being public. Obviously, we went early here in Phoenix. I mean, man, we had a huge advantage over friends in California or friends in the Northeast or even Canada. That we've had, man. They were locked down for a year. I mean, it was like a really big deal.
What, 3 months?
Yeah, it was really short. Like we jumped in really fast. Now, a lot of people didn't come back straight away, and we actually had lost a lot of folks during that era. But what we've realized from it was that we were able to retool and regrow, and we made a different set of priorities for how we were going to do ministry going forward. And it was in no way to say that what we did in the past was wrong was we're just taking a different tooling of the same message. And so that's why we went heavier into digital, heavier into video, and then even to this kind of concept where we're doing long form stuff. And we've always done shorts, and we've always done lots of video clips. I mean, we do that all the time. But for us to be able to do long form was another thing. We had the plan to do this for a year before we did it because of just so many projects that we were doing, and we couldn't do it all at the same time. So just too much to do, but powerful. So we've been kind of those people now as a resource for others that are now getting into that, now doing video walls, now doing power, now doing all the different pieces, even podcasting or video clips and stuff. We've been a resource for them because now they are seeing the value. And I'm thankful that we were willing to go first and be one of those kind of early doors to do it, because it's helped us, just be able to connect with people. So powerful thing. Yeah. Thankful, man. Cool. What a marker, you know what I mean? To see just God's consistency. Very thankful for that. Hey, one of our other C's is competence, and we've been talking about these books, Winning the War in Your Mind, which is from Pastor Craig Groeschel, a powerful book. We use it in our staff, and it was actually a really good takeaway. Angus, you got a chance to go through this book. One of the things that we're talking about today is this idea of rewiring your brain and renewing your mind. It's having a perspective of God, and definitely in perspective change context. What do you think about that?
I think it's very important. If you want a different result, then you've got to change the mindset that's motivating the behaviors that's your outcome. Right. And so that's so much of our problem. So much of the time is that we have these outcomes because of patterns and things that we've already established in our lives and preconceived notions, that if we were to take a different perspective and realize, just a different attitude about the same old thing, you can have a completely different result. And so, I mean, it's like doing the laundry with a positive attitude versus with a negative attitude.
Yeah, that's right.
And so making sure that you've got the right motivations and those kinds of things, rewiring is vital. I mean, it says it in the Bible, renew your mind. So
amen to that. Javen, what's an area you think that you've had a different perspective change that's rewired you differently?
I think for me, it's definitely like every time I think about the term rewire, it always stems back to like habits or habituation of something, just because like so often the temptation is like before you fall asleep or as soon as you wake up, is to like instantly check your phone and just like doom scroll or do whatever, or like to sit back and be lazy after like a long day instead of like doing something that's more productive or something that's good for you, like skip out on the gym or something like that. So for me, it's definitely like, especially during the time of prayer and fasting, was to be like super intentional with the way that I was doing things and just really do that unto the Lord. And it does take like, I think it's that 21-day rule or something where it's like, you need to do it for that long before it becomes habitual. Like it felt weird the day after we were, done with fasting. I was like, oh, I'm eating right now, but it feels really weird. It feels really strange just because like I've set aside that part. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, for me, that's always kind of what it's been to renew. And I think that stems back to like what your core values are, like what Angus was talking about, is as long as you root yourself in what you view as like truly the priority, which should be God or Jesus Christ in your life, then everything should revolve around that. And then everything else will kind of take suit. So
really good. I mean, perspective change means so much. It will give you the obedience factor to say yes to God in things that otherwise you couldn't say because you're wired differently. As we just read, talked about, the cross and the power of the cross, but it has to be from your perspective of seeing it as the actual truth and being the one that embraces what he's done for us versus those who reject it. And so they'll never see, by rejecting the cross, they'll never see his truth come through, shining through, unless they embrace what he's done for them. So such a powerful thing for us to think about, even as we talk about habits, talk about what we do and how we do what we're doing, and saying, Lord, I want to renew my mind to be more the way you think. I want to be more like Jesus. So in doing so, it helps us to be those people that make those big changes, and exactly what it says, win the war in your mind. Second book we want to talk about in this idea of competence is Dream Big by Bob Goff. And one of the things that he takes away here is he says that we need to keep asking the important questions. One of the things he says is, where are you? You can't go towards the big dream without knowing first where you are so that you can go where you need to go. Angus, what do you think has been something where you're saying, okay, we are here, but I want to go there? Has there been an example in your life or your family?
I mean, right now, one of the places is we are where we're at, but we would like to be in a bigger spot. We'd like to have a bigger house as the kids get older, and we're getting more and more cramped, and so we're happy where we're at, but we want to go further. Mm-hmm. And so we have to recognize where we're at now, and so that's exactly what we're doing. We're bringing attention to to behaviors that, look, if we're asking the Lord for a bigger house, we have to take care of this one. Mm-hmm. We have to do a really good job of stewarding over this. And so, like, if we're wasting money on light switches and this and that, then what is it going to look like when we have twice as many light switches?
Oh, right, sure.
Or, when we have a bigger refrigerator or whatever the thing is, the problems that we have now will only be bigger problems in a bigger house.
Right.
So we need to focus on where we're at now and make sure that where we are is working well.
I like that. It's a good attitude. Javen, what do you think about you, man? Where are you? Where do you want to go? You just started university. You're in your second semester. It's that process. Does that kind of click with you?
Oh, 100%. I constantly think about this question all the time. I'm like, because of everything that I'm doing now and kind of the way that I'm setting myself up to move within the next 4 or 5 years, where do I truly end up seeing myself, like, down that road? And obviously it's hard to kind of give like a concrete or definitive answer because it's so long in the future, but eventually it'll just come by like that. So you kind of need to be prepared in that regard. I think for me, I've just been kind of thinking about like where I really kind of feel like called to go, and like the more that I feel like comfortable with being not necessarily like in America or like within this country, within this continent, within this region of the world, it's just been like a really big question on my mind. So I'm looking to like go study abroad for a little bit, at least to figure out kind of what that looks like or what that would look like. Mm-hmm. And yeah, for me, I've just been constantly asking and praying that this is like the right thing for me to do, and like in continuing to move forward in that direction, whether or not I truly end up being in like a New York financier or something like that, is kind of like inconsequential as long as I'm doing what the Lord needs me to do now. So
that's good, man. That's right. Is that the new thing you're gonna have to say? Is be like, I'm in New York finance, no Epstein.
Yeah.
The way people
exactly
like no Diddy,
they'd
be like, yeah, I'm in New York finance, no Epstein.
Yeah, that's immediately what I thought as soon as I said that.
Oh, praise God. Tying back to the last thing about community, for me, we talk about it in staff often. We have these dream markers that are on the board, and we talked about how we want to be those who are growing to this next level. When we were just coming out of COVID, we said, these are the things we want to see. This is the reality of what we want to accomplish. And we want to go to multiple services. We want to do this other stuff online. We want to see this next piece happen. We want to expand. We want to build the balcony. And as we build those, then we're going to go and plant other locations. And praise the Lord, man. We've seen a bunch of these markers clipped off. Mm-hmm. And it's all because we've dreamed big for the future and trusting the Lord to help us navigate towards those things. And he has been with us in the whole process. Very thankful in knowing where we are and where we want to go. And so that's been a really powerful thing. I think in my own life, there's still elements of that stuff that, when I walked out of corporate America and the check that was attached to corporate America, especially as a young guy, looking that direction now, I'm very thankful and just see the Lord's hand upon so many things that we've been able to do, and how he's brought, just blessing upon our family, stuff that we haven't had to buy or haven't had to do, and things that have happened on our behalf. So very thankful. It doesn't necessarily be dollars in my account, but it's one of the things where it's like opportunities and life lived and things that otherwise people would spend big dollars to do. And it's like, man, God has just given us opportunity to do those things because we've been obedient to him. So praise the Lord, man. It's an amazing thing. Very thankful for that and for the future of what God wants to do. So dreaming big for the future of this year and beyond. One word to leave the podcast.
Oh, we'll go transformation.
Contemplation.
I'm going to say dream. Thanks so much for being with us and being a part of the collective. We love you wherever you are.